Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Good Parenting, Brighter Children Facebook Live. Thank you so much, those of you who have been able to join us tonight. This is a busy week and a weekend. There's a lot of people going out of town for the 4th of July, but this will be recorded on, it's being recorded now, and I will post it on all 3 of my Facebook pages as well as my YouTube channel. So thank you for joining us. I'm very excited about my guest tonight, Bob Purdon of the Piano Company. Bob has been selling pianos for 35 years. He's an expert and a professional. He knows incredible amounts of knowledge about how to pick out a piano and how to get the best quality piano for the most competitive price. Before I bring Bob up, I want to tell you a few things about him. He actually started playing the piano when he was 7 years old. When he was 11, he told his mom, "I think I know everything there is about the piano. I think I'll quit." But he had a very wise mother who said, "No. You're going to continue playing and practicing and taking lessons until you're 18 and you leave for college." Well, Bob had an epiphany at the age of 15. He found that girls like guys who can play the piano and play it well, and vice versa. So that spurred him on to continue playing, and he ended up going and graduating from Wayne State University with a degree in music. For 25 years after that, he taught piano performance, and then he was invited to join the piano industry in selling pianos. This was quite an honor because they just don't pick anyone. You have to have a lot of knowledge about pianos, the way they're constructed. He learned a tremendous amount of information, and he was invited he and Antoinette, his wife, were invited by several piano manufacturers to come to their company or to their countries and to see exactly how these pianos are made. He and Antoinette went to Japan, to China, to Germany, Italy, Switzerland, the Czech Republic, and several other places. They took him into the forests where they cut down the trees. They find the most beautiful, gorgeous wood. He learned about strings and metal, the metal that goes into the pianos. So Bob has traveled the world over, and he is at the top of his field, very knowledgeable, and he comes to us from the greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So let's bring Bob up. Are you there, Bob? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you. I'm glad to have you here, and thank you so much. We appreciate you being here on this busy weekend, and we're excited to get started and tap into your incredible knowledge about picking out a piano. So we'll bring up the first slide unless you have something else you'd like to say before.
Well, it's an honor to be able to participate because today, with all the things that compete for our time, it's really hard to stay focused and develop the skills necessary to play an instrument well. But the piano has great rewards connected with it. And you certainly, of all the people on the earth, know that as well as anyone with the studies that you've done. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you tonight and to share some thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Okay, so this is a picture. You tell us all about this.
Well, when I see that, I think of the piano in my living room because this is exactly the twin to the one that Antoinette and I have in our home. And it's, to be honest, it's a little bit overkill, but I've learned that the larger a piano is, the easier it is to play, which is why if you go to the Kennedy Center or to any major concert venue, you'll see the artist typically playing the largest instrument they can get their hands on because the leverages are better internally, and the sound, the range of dynamics is much greater, much better. So everything is designed to make the job of the pianist much easier.
Okay, that is a beautiful grand piano. Amazing. Go to the next slide and we'll look at the inside of it. So this one shows the inside of the piano, and is this something that you help people to understand about how the inside of the piano is and how that affects the sound that they're going to get from the piano, or what do you tell them?
Well, frequently families that come to us might have little children, and part of their first lesson in the piano store is that it's good not to touch what we're looking at on that screen because the little acids and oils on our fingers can actually create those high quality German steel wires we're looking at to rust because of the acid in our skin. So it's something that we want to look at and admire. And there's a lot of years of functionality that's gone into it, but that's the first lesson. is never touch it.
And is that even after you get it home, they should never touch the inside of the piano?
Well, not on the strings themselves, because a little bit of acid in our skin will cause it to rust where we've touched it. And you may not see it till a couple months later, but it comes.
Interesting. That's interesting. I think we've already goofed up our piano. I think we've touched those strings. Here's some other ones too. Is this also from a baby grand?
This looks like a larger than baby grand looking at it. And we're looking at the base section of strings, and you'll notice they're a different color than the others because all of those are wrapped in copper windings in order to make the sounds lower without having to make the strings longer than the piano.
Okay. So when you're picking out a piano, what do you usually tell people? Let's say they want an acoustic piano, and what do you usually tell them? Let's go to the next slide.
Well, we really find most of our lives are asking a lot of what we consider smart questions. And it's in the answers to those questions as their needs then become defined. And it becomes very clear. But there's about 30 questions that we have to go through. We won't have time for all of that here tonight, but we'll try to touch on some of them. Many people have identified where they're going to put the piano, which is somewhat relevant to the size instrument that will fit in their home. And many people today will select a vertical piano because they frankly just don't have the space for a huge concert grand like this one we see depicted. So that's a very normal acoustic vertical piano, one made by Kwai. We've sold literally hundreds of those instruments. Are very high quality, very high workmanship, and the parts are not affected by humidity and temperature change within. Those parts are made of materials that last longer and are not affected by humidity and temperature change, which are huge issues today. Plus the workmanship we found to be much higher in that brand, which does help a great deal, making the whole process easier for the student.
Let me ask you, I know that we have a baby grand from Mark's grandparents that, has become a legacy and an heirloom in our family. Unfortunately, because of the size of it, in every place that we've lived, it has always been by a window. Is that a no-no?
If it's a black or white piano, it may not be. There are several issues to look at. A lot of people think pianos are furniture, so they don't have a black piano. They have a wood finish piano. And if there's a possibility of UV filtering through that window, it will actually bleach the wood, so you have a multicolored, rainbow-colored wood piano when all the dust clears. So it's good to not have, certainly not any direct sunlight on any piano, because they're thermally sensitive, and it will cause the piano to go out of tune much more rapidly. But those are some of the quick considerations.
Well, clearly the paint on this piano, it needs to be refinished, and everything you're saying we're experiencing. So where's the one up here? Antoinette, go back. Go back to the next one. Is there anything else? I don't know what happened to it. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell us about acoustic pianos and picking them out?
Well, I think that the major brands are the ones I would stick with, because today there's a flood of instruments coming from Southeast Asia, various places, and the workmanship varies greatly, as well as the materials. Lots of sometimes even toxic materials are used in larger commodities than we would like. You won't find that with the piano depicted, because Kwai since they're based in California, very stringent ecological requirements to prove that there isn't a toxic element to their instruments. For children, that's very important.
Okay, so let me ask you another question on acoustic. Do most people want an acoustic piano still, or do you see that the younger people that are coming in for a piano, they're going to like a digital piano like we see here? What is the all-time favorite piano?
Well, I think the acoustic piano still reigns supreme in the world of serious musicians for many reasons, but only now are we starting to see digital pianos seriously close some of those gaps. And the advantages of digital pianos are undeniable. The fact that they never need to be tuned, irrespective of humidity or temperature changes, is a huge savings. When you consider all the manufacturers recommend tuning a piano twice a year if you live in an area where there are 4 seasons. So if we add the math on that, today a quality tuning on a piano can be an average of $200 per tuning. So now we're talking about $400 a year just in tuning. That assumes that none of the other 10,000 moving parts ever go out of adjustment, which is not a correct assumption. So pianos will need other things in the long term than just tuning. But digitals seem to circumvent that worry rather dramatically. And the sound quality is so good on some of them today that not even critics for the Los Angeles Times music critics could really tell the difference if they're in the next row. The sound has reached that level of fidelity.
That's amazing. Okay, this is a digital piano. So the one advantage is you don't have to tune it, and
Yes.
and that's a huge cost savings then.
It is, and the other advantage, it's rather strange, but is the fact that it can be played with headphones, because there are many times in the practicing of an acoustic instrument where someone might be interrupted with a long distance phone call, some member of the family doing their homework, trying to watch TV, doing their income tax, whatever it is. So the full volume of the piano, acoustic piano, cannot be as easily controlled as a digital because of the headphone features. So a great number of people that buy digital pianos are living in apartments, townhouses, condominiums, where they share common walls, and they're concerned about their neighbors criticizing the sound. Headphones eliminates all of those issues.
Okay, do they make a digital piano like in a baby grand or a grand, or is it strictly upright?
They do make variations of that, but in as much as the digital pianos do not have strings, the extra cabinet size is frequently mostly ornamental. It can be a large speaker cabinet. Some of them have 9, 10, or more speakers in them. So they're really reaching for the higher limits that an audiophile would expect from their equipment. And they can do that pretty effectively today, the top brands. I would avoid the no names, but if you're dealing with a Japanese piano, it's going to be far above average.
Okay, so one advantage then is the size. They can fit into a smaller space. Another advantage, you can use the headphones so that your neighbors won't hear it. And the other advantage is you don't have to tune it, which is huge. Are there any other things that if you were purchasing a digital piano for your home, what would you look at other than those 3 things?
Well, I think the sound selections, the ease of use, the kind of screens you have to work your way through in order to get the desired results. The recording capabilities are important. The interactivity with, today there are many apps that are used in the teaching process that didn't exist when I started my lessons some time back. But those apps are very helpful in causing the children to become excited about the process. The apps are very motivating. So the best instruments today come with Bluetooth, and they will sync up automatically with your iPad, smartphone, or a lot of other devices, and the apps can make it a lot more fun for children and young adults.
Okay, when you're talking about that, in other words, they can hear different instruments other than just the piano.
That's correct. And sometimes if you combine a soft or slow string and put it in the background with the piano, and you're playing a melodic piece by, let's say, Debussy, or one of the great Romantic period classical masters, the strings can lend a beautiful effect on top of the piano sound. And so when you put those together in the right fashion, it's much more motivating for a musical person to hear some sounds that way.
Okay, so they could actually be feeling like they're performing with an orchestra.
Exactly correct. And that gives, if you're playing piano concertos, that can be very important to have that orchestra capability.
So what other instruments can the digital piano play, other, like the violin, the clarinet, the oboe?
Well, I think most of the manufacturers have concentrated primarily on keyboard instruments like harpsichord, organ, church organ, electronic organ, theater organ, sometimes uh, marimbas or xylophones or instruments of that type, harps. But also now they're moving into a lot of other areas where before it was very difficult, like horns, woodwinds, brass. And some of those can do an amazingly good job at all of those. But most of them focus on keyboard related instruments.
Okay, so those will be the other instruments that they'll be able to bring up and have part of the repertoire that they're hearing as they're playing the digital piano, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, this is an example of a digital piano. This is an upright, obviously. As well, do these pianos come in all different wood, like wood tones, black, the black lacquer, everything as well?
That's a great question. And years ago, most piano buyers did not want a black piano. But that's changed dramatically over the years, where now today, 9 out of 10 purchasers of pianos want them to be black, partially because there's a halo effect. If you go to a concert, look up at the stage, professional instruments are 99% of them black. Unless you're Elton John or Liberace, had some pretty fancy instruments. But for home use, basic black denotes a professional look. And those finishes are not only waterproof, they're actually acid proof, which covers foods, drinks, cleaners, the air, our skin, all the corrosives around us. So they'll continue to look beautiful 100 years from now, where the wood finishes would be bleached by UV, would have many problems, many scratches. These are almost impossible to scratch in the high polish finishes. They have used special hardeners. It requires a metal object to put a scratch in one of these instruments. They're very dynamic.
That's amazing. Okay, now that's a hybrid. That's a digital. So that helps you to understand how they do fit into small spaces. So they're ideal. There's a lot of people now, young people, wanting smaller spaces, and this would be an ideal piano for them.
I think that's absolutely correct. And another hidden benefit to having one is they're dramatically lighter than acoustic pianos, which range from 500 pounds on up for most acoustic instruments, maybe 450, but in that range. Whereas digital pianos are usually 100 to maybe 150, 175, up to 200 average. So we have 1/3 to half the weight. And in this society we're in, where we move every 3.9 years, that portability can save us money and make that whole process easier. Heavy instruments can be damaged in moving, so military, students, people that are on temporary assignments, of which half of our population in the U.S. are probably on some variation of that. Digitals fit perfectly into that world.
Okay, there was one question I failed to ask you about the acoustic piano. So let's talk, what is the cost range of an acoustic piano? And then we'll go into the cost range of digital.
When I taught piano in Michigan for 25 years earlier, my students would often ask me, what should they plan on investing in an instrument? And of course, they would like those numbers frequently to be as low as they can be, but reality tells us that today, if you're purchasing a pre-owned acoustic piano, you shouldn't really think of spending much less than $3,500 for that privilege. And if it's a new acoustic piano, probably $5,000 and up would be a logical goal. And now there are digital pianos that fall underneath that category, anywhere from $1,000 to, let's say, $5,000 for the range of digitals. So sometimes the economic realities of families will determine what they're in. And if they really are short budget-wise, the digital becomes even more desirable.
Yeah, cost-wise, yes, definitely. So acoustics, a new one is 5,000 up, and a digital much less, the 1,000 up. Then.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right, let's talk about hybrids. I mean, those are pretty new, but they're fast becoming very popular. So what is a hybrid, and how does it compare to a digital?
Well, I think the piano manufacturers have borrowed the term from the auto industry, and there isn't really a common secure definition we can take away as to how a manufacturer would define it. But it usually is defined, a hybrid, as being an instrument that has some elements of both digital and acoustic. And the essential elements for a hybrid are really the action itself. So you can have today a digital hybrid with wooden key action like an acoustic, or you can have an acoustic piano with a digital component where you can use earphones like the girl depicted in the picture. So a teacher would prefer the latter because the action is quite known by a music teacher and quite dependable. So the piano that she's playing, however, does sell for quite a bit more. It's considerably over $10,000 because now you're really buying both a digital and an acoustic in one instrument. And so there are a lot of advantages to that. Recording capabilities and many of the things we've mentioned. You can email your compositions to your friends through a USB port on these. You can do all kinds of manipulations with the sound, layering strings on top of the acoustic piano sound. And if your piano goes out of tune, you could just shift gears and play the digital piano sound, which never goes out of tune. So you have all of those abilities.
Okay, so again, do you have to tune a digital piano then? I mean, I'm sorry, a hybrid.
Well, this one that's depicted would have strings and the same number of moving parts as a traditional acoustic piano. So yes, this would need to be tuned every 6 months to a year on the average. If one is fortunate enough to live in San Diego, California, where they have basically one season, they could probably get by with one tuning. But reality would say plan on two, and if you get by with less, so much the better. But yes, okay. These they definitely need maintenance, the same as a regular acoustic piano.
And so is usually the cost about the same, about $200 for tuning as well?
Yes, it would be the same cost for tuning. Yes, because the same number of strings have to be adjusted to the right tensions in this tuning process. And a good tuner is going to take maybe 1.5 to 2 hours for the whole process. So those over 200 strings require some time to get the tensions just right. And a good technician may do a little more than tuning. Frequently they do. A little adjustment here, or sticky note or something.
Have you noticed that now as more and more people hear about hybrids, that they're becoming even more popular than digital because they have both capabilities?
I think the main barrier there is the cost. I think if the cost came down, that probably would be the case. But the variation of a hybrid where they are cost affordable would be a digital hybrid with a wooden key acoustic action, and some even have sounding boards, which are used like speakers on the instrument, where you get your bass sounds, where the whole sounding board is vibrating, the whole entire back of the digital piano is vibrating or moving. And if you touched it during play, you'd feel the same sound vibrations that you would on an acoustic piano grand, like the one you have in your home.
Okay, interesting. Bob, you've had some pretty amazing experiences. You've gone all over the world. You've actually gone into the forests and seen how they cut down these trees. Tell us about this experience that you had in Europe, where you were, what the piano company was, and how they took you through this entire process of creating this heirloom piece.
Yes, well, it was a very educational experience because some major German piano manufacturers wanted to really show us as American dealers for the product what they go through just to select the woods that go into these instruments. So now we're looking at a picture of, I believe it's Switzerland as I'm looking at it. And one of the places that we went to, if we go to the next slide, maybe it'll show us. Yes, there's some wood drying in the open air, just the way the Germans and Swiss have done it for the last 200 years. They've learned more about wood than probably any other culture on the planet. They even have woods that they can grow in harmony with the cycles of the moon in such a way so they can make chimneys out of wood that will never burn.
Oh my goodness.
They've learned things about wood we could only imagine, but they are truly the experts, and they The process where the moon cycles are when the trees are planted, they keep track of that. It might take 200 years to grow the kind of wood we're looking at in this picture for one tree. Then the tree is harvested, also considering the cycles of the moon, the tides, the gravity, all of these things. You know, Germans are known, as I'm half German, I can attest to this, to over-engineer just about everything. When it comes to wood, they want to know everything, and they've learned so much. It was quite amazing and impressive. So Germans make, I think, some wonderful instruments, however, it's an expensive place to build things. So the downside there is going to be the pricing. It has to be higher because of the cost of labor and the fanatic level that the Germans devote to getting the right woods and materials in their piano, which we're looking at here. All the ends of those logs are marked as to when they were harvested, and they have codes where they can tell where the moon was at that time. This is called moonwood that we're looking at, and you'll see some more pictures of it as we advance the slides here.
So, all right, they don't even cut a tree down until it depends on where the moon is at that particular time. It's that precise then.
Yes, that is exactly correct, and it's a time-honored process, and there are family recipes that are applied here, just like Stradivarius making his famous violin out of wood. In his case, it's a species of Charissa spruce, which grows in the Val di Fiemme, which covers fairly close to what we're looking at here. It's about 300 square miles in Europe, at the top of Italy, lower Switzerland, etc. So here's an end view of wood that's about to be quarter sawn. So there are special ways of cutting this wood to give the grains of the wood the maximum advantage, since sound waves will follow the grains of wood. And if we get the right wood, a species of spruce for the sounding board, then it can conduct sound waves at the rate of 15,000 feet per second, better than any other material that has ever been discovered on the planet so far. There have been many experiments about what to use for the sounding board or the heart of the piano, but some species of spruce seems to have won hands down.
That is amazing. That is incredible. So here they're getting ready to cut the wood, I'm assuming?
Yes, it looks like some of this has already been cut, and this would be not quarter sawn because you can see the way the grains are running sideways on that end piece. So that would be used for some other part. It might not even make it into a piano. It might be used for what they consider lesser instruments, like stringed instruments or something like that.
Really? They consider, yes. Oh my, that is very, very interesting.
Even though, ironically, stringed instruments, when you get the good ones, just the bow for a good stringed instrument can cost more than an entire German piano. So the pricing structure is quite different.
Interesting, interesting. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so here is the finished product. Actually, let's go to the next slide. This is the finished product from this country, correct?
Yeah, that happens to be one of my earlier pianos in my home. I recognize the piano. It's a 7-foot Schimmel Grand, and it was what they call their Model 213 in their concert artist series. They make different levels of pianos, just like car manufacturers make Honda Civics and Honda Accords in different levels. So this was their top level at that time. Pretty impressive instrument. When you get to 7 feet in a piano size, the dynamic range is pretty dramatic. About the only way you're going to improve on that is to go to a concert grand, which that company also makes, but it would look a little too large in that space that we're looking at here. But ironic, it does look, it's a great instrument, a great investment too. And that's the other thing about it. Acoustic pianos like that hold their value. They go up in value if it's a good quality instrument. So it's a great investment for the family, a family heirloom. That's what that's designed to be.
So how rapidly does a piano like this go up in value? Is there a percentage that they,
not really, because it comes down to, in this case, exchange rates. Because now we have an instrument that's manufactured currently based on the euro in Germany. And so if the exchange rates are favorable, then we can, with our US dollars, do a little better. But it becomes a rather complex economic model to try to plot that. So we can say in general, the value is going up all the time for fine instruments, and it's a good investment. But the time value of money, what our depreciation is doing with our money, all of that interplays here. And it becomes hard to track when we look at a long period.
Well, it's a beautiful instrument. Bob, this has been very, very helpful. Let's go on and look at some of the slides. Here you are in front of one of your stores and that you manage, the piano company, and go to the next one. This is one that we took off of your website.
Yes.
It's beautiful. This is in a mall.
Yes, it's in an upscale mall near the Dulles International Airport. So there's a lot of traffic from all over the world that comes to this mall. We had a customer in not long ago that seemed to play the piano quite well. When he was approached by Antoinette, she discovered she was talking to Andre Previn in that store we're looking at.
Oh my goodness.
It's probably the most honored musical person living alive yet in the U.S. at this moment of time. So there he just wanders into the mall. And she said, "You play pretty well." I didn't want to mention his name. She had to look him up, what he looked like on the internet to figure out that's who she was talking to, because he's a very humble guy. But talk about musical achievements, it's hard to top what he's already done.
Oh my goodness, yes. That is amazing. And here is the inside of some of the pianos. And this is beautiful.
Yes, yes.
Beautiful.
Yes, thank you.
And here you are with Antoinette and
a famous book.
Yeah, yeah, you have done such an incredible service for 35 plus years in helping people find pianos, purchase pianos, keep them as heirlooms, trade up when the time is right, when they want to. You have anything that you'd like, any last tidbit of advice or anything that you'd like to tell us?
Well, I think, yes, if I had to really make one solid recommendation for every person ever considering finding a fine instrument for themselves or their family, it would be to read your book, Charlene, because that's the main thing that I think needs to happen, because people have lost sight of the value of traditional music lessons and what it does for the brain. It is so dramatic. It helps memory and concentration and all those skills we need to be successful in life. And today, athletics seem to be winning the contest based on the budgets that go into high school athletic departments versus the arts budgets. But to develop the universal man of the Renaissance, it was a good idea to bring balance into our lives and to have an equal place for the arts as opposed to any other athletic interests we might pursue. And so I think your book establishes that very well. And there have been so many studies, McDonald's, and on about the benefits, which are far beyond the length of our time tonight. But we all need to be ambassadors for this in order to preserve this important part of our heritage, our culture, how it lifts the whole geopolitical environment of people as they become dedicated to exploring his potentials in their own family.
Thank you. And another thing too that I think is when you mentioned the Renaissance man, they learned the arts because it helped them to think back during the time of Plato and Aristotle and all of those great Greek philosophers. It helped with the process of thinking. So if nothing with that alone, I think is very important. And Bob, we actually have a question that came up here. It said, can you put both of us up there, Mark? Both there.
In a second.
Hold on one second. Okay, it says, my daughter recently moved from Washington State, where their small grand piano was by a shaded window in their new home in Central Texas, the piano is in a room with a large window. they should probably keep the blinds closed because of the very bright Texas sun. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be a very good plan, because it's not just the potential for damaging the finish of the instrument, but it will definitely, since pianos are so thermally sensitive, just the heat alone from that radiant energy, if it's a black finish, will be absorbed in the piano, causing it to go out of tune more quickly. It ages the wood more quickly. There's a lot of downsides to sunlight on a piano, really of any finish, but especially a black one, which is absorbing radiant energy, or a wood finish, which would be bleaching.
Okay, all right, thank you. Are there any, can you put both of us up? Are there any other questions that we have? I'm looking here and it doesn't look like it. Bob, thank you so much. This has been amazing. This has been informative. A couple of things to the audience. If you want more information, please go to my blog, Good Parenting, Brighter Children, and you'll see I wrote an entire blog on purchasing a piano, and Bob was the person, he and his wife, I interviewed them for this and went over everything step by step to make sure that I had it correct. They are a warehouse of information. Bob is a professional and an expert in this field, and if you're ever in the Washington, D.C., Virginia area, look up the piano company and go and meet Bob and Antoinette and have them tell you all about it, and also have Bob play. He's a very accomplished pianist as well. So thank you, Bob. We appreciate you being here, and have a great 4th of July, everyone.
Thank you, Charlene.
All right, bye-bye.